so many movies and books will, in many ways, glamorize and romanticize this. I'm paraphrasing my father's comments. The World War II experience and a reference to Greatest Generation. And no doubt there is a lot to be said for that. However, his experience was 3 years that he would just as soon not have had. He said it was a terrible hardship on families, on careers, on education, on the individuals themselves. And personally, he could have done very well without the whole mess. But he did enlist. He enlisted not because he wanted to, but because he had to. We all had to. It was the right thing and only thing we could do. I'm quoting him when I say that. He enlisted in the Army. He did not want to go into combat and carry a rifle. That's why he asked about being a medic. He had heard that medics weren't required to be armed. He was fortunate that he had very good grades, and he was able to test into the position of medical specialist. And he was sent into combat anyway and given a rifle along with his first aid kit. It was about 40 years ago that I found an old yellowed newspaper, the Waterbury American, from April of 1945, but it was in a trunk in the basement of our home. And seeing that on the left was Private Leonard March-Zwick of Union City, Connecticut, standing with a prisoner over an open grave at concentration camp Langenstein-Zweiberg in Germany. And this grave held the bodies of those who had died from Nazi ill treatment at that camp. And that photograph above the fold captured, of course, my eye and my curiosity. I saved that newspaper for when my dad came home from work that night. And I asked him about it, and he did not want to talk about it. He snatched that newspaper out of my hand and asked me if I had finished my homework yet. And we didn't discuss that photograph or that newspaper again for nearly 40 years.
I remember other photos that Dad had, and I don't know if you ever saw those. He certainly did not talk about them. But from an old Brownie camera, which would have been appropriate at the time of the service, he had little curled pictures in an old album, and one in particular that struck me. There was Dad kneeling down. He had his, what was comparable to an AK-47, I guess, looking, and there were a couple of long bones just emerging from the earth.
On Sunday morning is the memorial service, where music, flowers, and ceremony of remembrance will take place. It's really a lovely thing that I've been invited to give my formal remarks. This is where it comes to, I feel, second generation, third generation. We aren't going to have any more of the first-hand soldiers, citizens, workers, prisoners that lived this experience from the late 1930s till the mid 1940s. They'll be gone, every one of them.